From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
The governor of North Carolina declares an emergency over school choice as a scholarship program for low-income students in Illinois is allowed to expire. Welcome, I'm Kyle Peterson with the Wall Street Journal. We are joined today by my colleagues, columnist Kim Strassel and editorial board member Colin Levy. Let's start today in North Carolina, where Governor Roy Cooper issued an emergency. And here is a clip of his statement.
It's time to declare a state of emergency for public education in North Carolina. It's clear that the Republican legislature is aiming to choke the life out of public education. Their private school voucher scheme will pour your tax money into private schools that are unaccountable to the public and can decide which students they want to keep out. They want to expand private school vouchers so that anyone, even a millionaire, can get taxpayer money for their children's private academy tuition. This drops an atomic bomb on public education by shrinking the state's budget by almost 20%. Public school superintendents are telling me they'll likely have to cut schools to the bone.
Kim, what do you make of the governor's statement there?
Oh, my goodness. What a pack of baloney and what a stunt as well, declaring an emergency. Look, this is only going to drop an atomic bomb on Roy Cooper's main backers, which are the teachers union. What we're really talking about here is a Republican legislature in North Carolina that's putting out a new budget, and it's got some provisions in it. One of them is that, yes, North Carolina is going to go and follow in the wake of a number of other states and essentially offer universal school choice, meaning any family, regardless of income, can apply for vouchers for K through 12. And some of the money that would go to the public schools would follow them into other institutions if that is what they choose to do. Now, Roy Cooper is saying, oh my gosh, this will cut the schools to the bone. By some estimates, there are some estimates from the left saying this could cut $200 million out of public school budgets. But a couple of points just to make here. One is the budget also includes a big teacher pay increase for public school teachers to give them more resources. And as we all know, too, private vouchers do not necessarily have to harm public schools, especially if those public schools respond to the challenge of competing against other facilities. And that is one of the great merits of school choice, is that you don't just have a teachers union monopoly that sucks up ever more taxpayer dollars. The one thing that Cooper got entirely wrong there is he was saying that this is going to somehow create a situation in which there are private schools that are not accountable to the public. No, they're entirely accountable to the parents. The parents are going to make decisions about where to send their kids. The difference is that legislation like this is finally trying to inject some accountability into the public school environment. And it looks like the Republicans have the vote to pass this, and Cooper's just annoyed because he can't necessarily veto it because they have supermajorities.
You called it a stunt, and it seems to me that what good does declaring an emergency do if it does not unlock some kind of gubernatorial powers that he is going to use to oppose this? Or is this just a matter of rhetoric? And it calls to mind another recent example. The NAACP recently issued a travel advisory for the state of Florida, warning people if they are going to visit Florida to be aware of open hostility toward African Americans and people of color. This was in response, it said, direct response to Governor Ron DeSantis' policies on school, what the NAACP called his attempts to erase Black history. But Colin, go look into this matter. You will find, as the Florida Department of Education says, that the state law requires instruction on the enslavement experience, abolition, the civil rights movement. And by the way, if you look at the test scores, the NAEP test scores, national tests, Black eighth graders in Florida are doing better in reading and better in math than they are nationally, and also better than they're doing in Maryland, which is where the NAACP is headquartered. And so that stunt is what comes to mind for that example, at least to me as well. And it's this school choice stuff. It really gets people on the left riled up.
No, Kyle, that's for sure. I mean, I think these were both extremely hyperbolic scare campaigns. In terms of what happened in Florida, I actually found it sort of sad because it really transformed a discussion that's fundamentally about policy. No question, quite a contentious policy, but policy about what schools should be teaching and which sources they should be using, and trying to present kids with a history of America's racial history. Now, that history is painful, and debates about which sources to use and presenting it shouldn't immediately degenerate into accusations that your political adversaries are racist. As you said, Florida's public schools are required by law to teach students about the enslavement experience and abolition and the civil rights movement. And turning this into a stunt the way the NAACP did, saying that Florida is fundamentally against all African Americans, I just thought was really unfortunate. And as far as what's going on in North Carolina, I wanted to elaborate a little bit on what Kim's saying, because I found the statement from Governor Cooper so disingenuous. Claiming that voucher programs are the problem in public education is total misdirection. Voucher programs are a response to an insane ongoing problem of failure in the public school system. And they're an imperfect way, but nonetheless a way of rescuing some kids from that failure. And as Kim said, giving the parents some choice here. So critics often say that these school choice programs are stripping public schools or jeopardizing public education. But I think it's critical that we remember here that the point of public education, the reason this nation guarantees a public education, was to guarantee to all students that they receive a free education paid for by the state. It's not to guarantee that all teachers and teachers' unions and pieces of the state education monopoly, that their jobs and status and power be protected at the expense of the students they're supposed to be serving.
Kim, it is remarkable, though, for conservatives who think that they are not making any progress, that Republicans haven't won anything or conserved anything. It is remarkable to go back and look at the record of the school choice movement, which began fairly recent history. And especially in just the past few years, there have been big victories, universal choice coming to Florida under Governor Ron DeSantis, I believe Arizona. There are all of these states that are doing these programs. And it seems to me that's because they're popular and they work and parents like them and parents appreciate them. I've cited this polling a few times, but if you look at the exit polls for Ron DeSantis's first run for governor, he won very, very narrowly and got a higher percentage of Black women votes than maybe you would have expected. That looked like a little bit of an outlier in the poll. And there's some analysts down in Florida who suggest that that's because his opponent promised to eliminate and roll back these Florida school choice programs, and Governor Ron DeSantis promised to expand them. And now we're talking about North Carolina, which is a red state, but with a Democratic governor. And it's not only that this plan looks like it is going to pass the legislature, it looks like it's going to probably be vetoed. And then the veto may be overridden because the Republicans hold a supermajority there. And that's in part thanks to one Democratic defector, a state legislator who was a Democrat and has changed recently to a Republican. And part of that looks like, according to the statements she has made, that she has been convinced by school choice.
For all those on the left who are complaining about these school choice initiatives, this is an example of you reap what you sow, okay? Because there is a straight line between everything that happened in COVID and what we now see is a school choice revolution. School choice has been around for a long time, and you saw it mostly just around the edges and in red states. It is now storming across the United States. Just to build on what you said, Florida, universal school choice, but also Iowa, Utah, Arkansas, West Virginia, and Arizona. There are pending bills for universal school choice in Oklahoma, Ohio, Wyoming, and Texas. There's more limited forms of school choice being debated in Nebraska, South Carolina, Kansas, and Pennsylvania. And again, most of this exploded ever since people were stuck in their homes and saw what a horrible job some of these public sector teachers were doing, and watched their school districts refuse to reopen and held at the hostage of these union demands. Whereas, by contrast, private schools were doing their best to be open and doing a better job of educating kids. So this is why you see it exploding. It also helps that you've got a lot of energized parents these days that have funneled a lot of their attention into some of these activist groups that are really engaged at the moment. We had the midterms last year, and there might not have been any big waves to either side, except for in the area of school choice. This outfit called Americans for Children, which Corey DeAngelis, who writes for us, is involved with, they challenged 69 incumbents in the last election, and they took out 40 of them that were opposed to school choice. And so we're just seeing this incredible momentum. And in North Carolina, yes, there is a very high likelihood that the Republicans will override any veto by Roy Cooper. And that's in part not just because of the one Democrat who changed her affiliation to the Republican Party over this issue of education, but you had a number of Democrats who voted recently for that Senate budget and universal school vouchers because even more moderate Democrats are understanding the power of this issue and that voters, in terms of parents, are going to punish those who stand in the way.